and welcome to this meeting of the Council. I'm Councillor Liz Malvisi and I'll be chairing the meeting today. Before the meeting commences, however, there will now be a minute's silence to remember our Mid-Suffolk Councillor Rachel Eburn, who passed away last Friday. Can you all stand, please? I now invite Councillor Saw, leader of Babergh Council, who will also pay tribute to Councillor Rachel Eburn during her announcements.
Thank you, Chair. Everyone in this room believes in the power of public service and the power of place. I'm sure we all also believe in democratic accountability. At the end of last week, I was at the DCN conference, and as you can imagine, there was only one topic for discussion: local government reorganisation. We were also graced by the presence of the Minister Jim McMahon and Baroness Taylor. Without compromising our later discussion, I should tell you the Minister did say, when speaking about the 500,000 size limit for councils, what's right for one might not be right for another. And we accept where there are different views and that there will be trade-offs and compromises. Baroness Taylor also told us to watch out for the publication of the long-term housing strategy in the spring. Define spring. But what she did tell us was the spending review, which will be announced by the Chancellor next week, would be very hard for districts. What she also revealed was that perhaps she was a little confused about rural areas. She told a collection of rural district councils that the Rural Services Delivery Grant had been taken away because it should be based on need, not geography, need. So that was received with some confusion. Looking forward to tomorrow, the Council will be holding a meeting introduced by our MP, James Cartledge, on neighbourhood plans. But not just neighbourhood plans, the implications of the changes to planning, both the National Planning Policy Framework and the Planning and Infrastructure Bill that was introduced last week. We believe that it is our responsibility and our duty to make sure that our towns and villages understand the implications of these changes. Obviously, housing is an area that we are passionate about. The first Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Registered Providers Forum met in Ipswich at the end of February. Registered providers, or RPs as they're more commonly known, are housing associations. They're hugely important partners to the council. Whilst Babergh owns and manages most of the affordable homes in the district, the RPs look after more than 2,700 houses for the benefit of Babergh residents. As builders and buyers of affordable homes, they are vital in ensuring that we can meet housing needs now and into the future. The terms of reference for the forum were agreed and the RPs were given an update on the local plan, We will be working with them to ensure that the new plan helps us to work together to deliver healthy and sustainable communities with the affordable homes our residents need. We look forward to ever stronger relationships in future and doing everything we can to help RPs deliver in Babergh. I should also like to just talk about the Bridge project, which I know is a hugely valued organisation in Sudbury and has done some excellent work, both as regards providing Meals on Wheels, but also looking after the needs of students with learning difficulties. It is a cherished institution. We were all very sad to see it announce insolvency at the end of last week. However, we have partnered this organisation over the years and have done all we can to help it, but things are looking quite positive as regards the meetings that they are having, and they're collaborating closely with a trusted local partner and are cautiously optimistic that they can secure ongoing support for their service users. There's even a possibility of maintaining a base at Boreham Gate under a new organisation, and Babergh officers are working closely on this with partners. As regards the Arts Centre, the Bridge is working in close partnership with the Churches Conservation Trust to ensure that any disruption at Sudbury Arts Centre is kept to a minimum. Both partners are working at speed towards a resolution. As far as meal delivery services are concerned, the Bridge has told us that they have been working closely with Aspect Living, and they are able to take on all the meal delivery customers. And they're currently finalising the necessary processes to facilitate that transition. So, although it was an exceptionally sad occurrence, I think that all partners, both county, the district, and the voluntary sector, have worked very well together to ensure that there may well be a favourable resolution to this situation. In conclusion, I would like to just say a few words about Councillor Rachel Eburn, who I know many people across the chamber have worked with over the 15 years that she was a parish councillor. And although Rachel was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer in 2019, many councillors didn't actually realise she was ill, which says an enormous amount about her. She refused to be defined by her illness. She worked resolutely for both her council and her residents. I know all of us have had the pleasure of working with Rachel, know what a fearsome intellect she had, and she was a phenomenon, a force of nature. So I would just like to say that everybody who worked with Rachel within this chamber and officers and her communities offer their sympathy to her husband Richard and her two sons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now to come back to the business of this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If any member of the public attending the meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we will ensure that they are not included in the filming. Members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intending to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk. May I request that mobiles are on silent or switched off and that your laptops are switched to silent. In the event you hear the fire alarm, please leave the building by the first available exit and make your way to the assembly point at Ipswich Town Football Ground. I now move to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair, we have received apologies from Councillor Margaret Maybury, Councillor Mark Newman, Councillor John Nunn, Councillor John Ward, Councillor Adrian Osborne and Councillor Lee Parker.
Thank you. Declarations of interest by councillors. The monitoring officer has granted Babergh District councillors dispensation to allow them to speak and to vote on matters concerning devolution and/or local government reorganisation at all Babergh District Council meetings, where they may otherwise have a disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest, or non-registrable interest. Are there any other declarations of interest? No? Thank you. We now move to the minutes. Are there any issues with accuracy? Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of things. After 99.30, after 99.29 and before 99.30, I raised a point of order, and surely that context is needed here after a personal attack had been made to account for the fact that people left the meeting and a point of order was raised, and there is no mention of it at all. I'm just wondering if that's normal.
What about the context? Okay, we can make an inclusion to cover that aspect that we've omitted.
I have
Apologies,
another
yes.
point as well. Yes, thank you. And the other three point, 99.33, Councillor Rees raised, etc., and that the Conservative group had provided input into the budget and were willing to cooperate going forward. I didn't say that we were willing to cooperate going forward. I said that we had cooperated.
Okay.
And we had been cooperative.
We'll make that a correction. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Thank you very much. Can I have a proposer, please, for the minutes? Councillor Owen, are you proposing? Thank you very much. And a seconder, please? Councillor Saw. All those in favour? Yeah, okay. That's carried. Thank you very much. Now, I draw your attention to my paper, BC 2447, for noting, and thank you. Councillor Saw has already made her announcement. Is there anything you'd like to add, Councillor Saw, before I move on? No? Okay, thank you. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with Council Procedure Rules.
None received.
Thank you. Questions by the public in accordance with Council Procedure Rules. I refer you to the question in the tabled papers. I would now like to invite Mr. Goswell to ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. In regard to Council responsibilities for community safety and safeguarding, I respectfully ask the following question of the assembled elected councillors. Does Babergh District Council endorse the request of colleagues at Oldham Council in their call for a full national public inquiry into the rake gangs? To date, the councils of Wigan, Stockton, North Tyneside, Bolton, Blackpool and Northants have endorsed the request of colleagues at Oldham Council and called for a full national public inquiry into the rake gangs. If Babergh District Council does endorse the request of colleagues at Oldham Council will Babergh District Council request that the Babergh District Council Chair write to the Prime Minister of His Majesty's Government and the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls to join cross-party calls for a full national public inquiry into rape gangs, with the inquiry having full statutory powers. That concludes my question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr Goswell. I now invite Councillor Smith to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. While Babergh is a safe place to live, work and visit, the Council recognises that sexual violence remains a significant societal issue, often rooted in harmful attitudes and gender-based stereotypes that disproportionately affect women and girls. Violence against women and girls is a key priority for Babergh and its community safety parties across Suffolk, and we remain committed to enhancing our partnership work, expanding and supporting support services, as well as holding perpetrators to account. Suffolk has a strong system-wide approach to violence against women and girls, and will soon be launching its new strategy for Suffolk, Ending Violence Against Women and Girls Plus. The strategy is designed around those who have lived experience of domestic abuse and sexual violence, focusing on local issues and concerns, and it's strongly influenced by national policy in regard to how we respond to and support victims. We recognise there have been national calls for another inquiry. However, at this time, we are keen to see the original recommendations of the 2022 Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, chaired by Professor Alexis Jay, fully implemented, and energy being put to that, and we will continue to focus on addressing local issues and concerns.
Thank you. Mr Goswell, would you like to ask a supplementary?
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair. No, I filled the question and there's no need for me for a supplementary question, but thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to paper BC 2448, English Devolution White Paper, Local Government Reorganisation. And I'd like to invite Councillor Saw to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Chair. We're here tonight because councils have been invited as part of the English Devolution White Paper to submit an interim report to government on our initial views around local government reorganisation. This is only the first stage of the process, and we've been asked to provide the government with a progress report on the shape of our thinking and direction of travel. This is what the Minister calls a temperature check. It is very important for us to hear your views at this stage before we proceed to the next stage of the process, which will be a detailed, fully costed plan on how to transform not just council services, which are currently provided by the county, districts and borough, but all public services in Suffolk. That needs to be delivered by the 26th of September. The document before you tonight is not that plan, but we are here to discuss it because we have a deadline of producing something and delivering it to the department by Friday the 21st, i.e. tomorrow. What the paper before you tonight is, in Appendix C, is the result of an intense period of work by the leaders, chief executives and officers across the districts and boroughs. You will be aware that all the other district councils in Ipswich Borough have met this week to discuss and debate the report and the interim plan contained in Appendix C, and it's our turn tonight. You will also know that there are two different visions being put forward for the future of local government in Suffolk. one single unitary, which is being proposed by the administration at the County Council, and the other supported by all the districts and borough leaders. Pending our meeting tonight for a multi-unitary solution of 2 or 3 smaller unitary authorities for Suffolk. Why do I support this proposal? Many councillors in the chamber tonight were elected for the first time in May 2023. I'm sure I was not alone in being sometimes surprised and sometimes even confused by the way local government makes its decisions and why it's structured the way it is. But what I am absolutely convinced about is that councils that are close to their communities, that are responsive to those communities, and recognise and respond to the importance of neighbourhoods and place will be the most effective. Every time there are surveys into which parts of the political estate are most valued and trusted by people, councillors always rank highly. They're always more trusted than their Westminster counterparts. I mentioned earlier, no, actually I didn't, but I'll mention it now. The Deputy Prime Minister thinks one of the advantages of LGR is fewer politicians. Some in this room may be members of political parties, but what we all are is champions for our communities. There are currently 308 council seats across county and districts and the borough. LGR will reduce that number. Reducing that number down to between 90 and 140 councillors, which is the single unitary proposal, would put an intolerable workload on those councillors. It will be a full-time job, with the inevitable result that we limit the pool of people who will stand, and we already know how challenging it is to find candidates for election now. Just imagine a councillor who lives in Haverhill sitting on a planning committee making decisions about Lowestoft, not to mention how long it would take them to get there. Multi-unitaries will have more councillors and will ensure residents in their communities are properly represented. What is even more important is to hear the views of the people and communities we represent. I am sure many members have started to have those discussions with parishes and residents and have received some strongly expressed opinions. During the process, there will be consultations taking place with business, voluntary groups and charities, towns and parishes, and most of all, residents. Currently, I'm not sure whether central government may wish to run these, but I do think council should take the lead. I have to say, local government reorganisation came as a surprise. It hadn't been mentioned in Labour's election manifesto, and it seems to have been an afterthought to devolution. Don't misunderstand me. I do believe that a system that has been in place for 50 years should be refreshed. The Suffolk district and borough leaders are up to the challenge. We do not just see local government reorganisation as purely an exercise in giving money back to the Treasury, but an opportunity to redesign public services, not just the ones the county and districts do now, but all public services, so that we can deliver healthcare at the neighbourhood level, build communities with the right infrastructure, ensuring homes add to the well-being of people who live in them, and providing a roadmap for all people of any age that will help them secure a better future. By being imaginative and creative, we believe we can deliver better services that can help to bring solutions to the problems that have confronted us for so long, working in partnership with the Mayor and central government and delivering cost savings. But we aren't starting from the premise that only a large council that is far away from individuals and communities and is focused on a number-crunching approach is the answer. Settling for a county council with a new wrapper will not cut it. Why is it inevitable that a bigger council is a better council? There are very effective smaller unitaries with a population of 260,000. Westmoreland and Furness comes to mind. And much bigger unitaries with a population of nearly 1 million, like Somerset, which are struggling. Somerset is predicting a shortfall of 100 million, rising to 190 million in 26-27. The government's 500,000 target is arbitrary, and the Minister has signalled that it isn't set in stone. The districts and borough leaders believe 2 or 3 unitaries offers the best opportunity to transform services, remain financially sustainable, and generally reflect local circumstances and needs. I support the recommendation of designing local government in Suffolk with communities at heart, based on multi-unitary authorities. Let's keep local government local. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saw. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Holt. We will now move to questions. Oh.
So I would like the opportunity to reserve my opportunity to speak, if that's all right.
Yeah. So we now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Councillor Holt?
Yes, just perhaps the Chief Exec can just confirm, as we go through the process, this is a full council decision. Councillor Saw's mentioned that the leaders, the 5 leaders throughout Suffolk have been moving things forward, and I fully understand that due to the timetable implemented by government, which has been very, very tight, and it's impossible, I think, to have done anything else. But obviously, we are full council decision makers, where the other 3 authorities are cabinet decision makers. So there is a different mindset amongst the authorities. I just want to make sure that we recognise that, and to ensure that we will have the opportunity to vote in future as we are tonight.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Just to clarify, so the other authorities have slightly different constitutions, whilst all of the authorities have the cabinet model. We have some specific clauses in our constitution that reserve this matter to come back to here for decision making. So there is no further decision making point to go to cabinet. The decision tonight is the only place that it needs to go to. And similarly, as Councillor Saw's already alluded to, the latter process is a submission by the 26th of September. Again, that decision making will be made at full council alone, not via cabinet.
Councillor Clover?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just a question of accuracy, really. Councillor Saw referred to the geographic size of Suffolk, and on page 31 we've got the phrase, it takes 2.5 hours to travel from one end of the county to the other. Now, I actually punched in, I thought that sounded quite a distance, so I punched in Newmarket to Lowestoft on the AA route finder, and that was 1 hour 34 minutes, and then Haverhill to Lowestoft is 1 hour 52. So I'm just interested to know where that figure of 2.5 hours to travel across the county came from, because if that's not right, then we've got to start looking at the other parts of the reasons given. So that's my question. Thank you.
Councillor Saw?
Can add to this. I believe this was actually an average over a time period. As we know, we are blessed in Suffolk, as in many places, with rather a lot of traffic delays, and roadworks, and I think this was actually based on an average across the year. And perhaps, Councillor Clover, you've got a very fast car.
Councillor Clover.
I assure Councillor Saw I always drive within the speed limit. I think it's just interesting. I thought that 2.5 hours, maybe that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. Thank you.
I don't think there's much I can add to what Councillor Saw said. The only thing I would say from my experience is Google Maps doesn't allow for the tractor that you inevitably find within Suffolk.
In a rural environment. Any other questions? Councillor Carter?
Thank you. So in your introduction you mentioned about the consultation which I think is really important because no one seems to know what's going on, which is very unfair considering how much this is going to affect everyone. So can you just elaborate on how residents, local businesses will and when be consulted? Thank you.
Certainly, and I totally agree with you. I think that we must put time in this process for consultation, and the widest consultation we can have. There is one small wrinkle in this. Despite asking the Minister on numerous occasions when we might get feedback on our interim proposal before we move on to the full proposal, we haven't actually had an answer on this. So I think our view is that we will proceed with the full proposal, notwithstanding that, and the chief executives will be meeting on this, obviously dependent on what we vote in the chamber tonight. There will be a plan, and there will be a plan for consultation, and the widest consultation that we can do within the district. And I know that other councils will be doing the same. But as to when that will be between now and the 26th of September, I can't give you a definitive answer. But please be assured we will be consulting as widely as we can.
If the chief exec can
I was just going to add ever so slightly to that. So, Councillor Storr alluded earlier to who carries out that consultation as well, which I know wasn't quite the question. So the expectation from government is that we will be responsible for that initial public engagement. We've already carried out a very short period of public engagement. There wasn't very long to do it, so it was limited to Suffolk-wide stakeholders in order to inform this interim plan. But we will then carry out much wider, as Councillor Storr says, much wider public engagement, but we've yet to determine exactly how and when that will take place, but quite clearly it needs to happen before the 26th of September, and well before the 26th of September, in order to inform the debate that you then subsequently have here. Once that has been completed, our understanding is that government will also then carry out their own consultation. That will come later in the year, and that will be at the point at which they have determined what they are inclined to do. So once they have considered the proposals that come in relation to Suffolk as a whole, and the Minister has formed a view as to what he is inclined to do, then our understanding is there will be further public consultation, as I say, by government on that proposal, and that is likely to be, in government terms, autumn. Again, when exactly autumn is, it seems to vary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I be assured that it's not only going to be online, our consultation, it will be in person as well?
To be frank, Councillor Owen, we haven't actually discussed this as yet because we've been somewhat focused on getting this report to you tonight. However, in my personal opinion, I think it's very important that we have face-to-face meetings in towns and in wider parishes so that we can actually be assured of what people's views are. So we want to get the widest participation we can.
Does anyone else? Councillor McLaren?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councils are in the people business, and up to now we've mentioned the electorate and we've mentioned councillors, but there's a big group of people who I would be interested in what we're going to do to support the many hundreds of staff that are employed by the 6 councils. I think starting negotiations like this is very disturbing for all of them. So my question, one, is what support are we giving our staff now? And that probably goes across the whole county. And the second question is, how are you going to avoid demotivation of staff as they go through the process, which will take quite some time? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McLaren, and you are absolutely right. And I think I actually should offer officers an apology for not mentioning them in my introduction. So far, we have tried very hard to keep officers, all our workforce, informed about what is happening. There are several officers who are very involved in this process, helping us put together plans, crunching numbers, etc. I think we should say from the very beginning that the Chief Executive and the SRT were very determined, as were we, to communicate as much as we could during the process to officers and workforce about what was going to happen. It hasn't been that easy at the very beginning because we weren't too sure what was going to happen either, and we're still not really sure. So I think our starting off point is that we're going to be over-communicating to staff, and that we are going to try and reassure them as much as possible. One of the things that I think they should keep in mind is that we are a high-performing councillor. We've got the awards to show it. I was delighted to see that we won the IEASY Hall of Fame Award, which is kind of like the Oscars of transformation, for having actually the most sustained record of innovation. And I think that record of innovation will stand our officers in good stead as we go forward. We are still going to need planners, we are still going to need housing maintenance people, we are still going to have people who communicate with our residents, and they do a very good job. But it is true that is why, although we are all very keen to see financially sustainable councils, we are also very keen to see resilient councils, high-performing councils, and high-performing councils need high-performing staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, just moving forward, I touched earlier with the short time span we've had that the leaders have taken the lead on this, but it is a full council decision, it's our decision. Moving forward into the next 6 months, are we happy collectively, those sitting here and those who aren't present, that we continue along that model? Because Deborah's done a fantastic job in doing what she's done in the short space of time, but we're being presented with options, whereas it should be us that are deciding those options and leading those options. So I think as a chamber, we need to have a good think, and perhaps Deborah can and Arthur can, just to see if there is a slightly different model that we can follow. Because at the moment, we're being presented with something that we've really had not much debate about. As group leaders, we've had meetings and we've been informed of things as they've gone on, but with very little opportunity necessary to change things. So I think we need to, time's short, but we do need to give thought to how we, as an authority, as members, all of us members, want the process to go forward. Because 6 months sounds much longer, but actually there's no time at all. So we're going to have to make quick decisions, and to come back here every month isn't really, I think, an option, but is there a better way in the interim that groups, parties can have a working, I hate working groups, working committees, but some form of input rather than what's happened to date, which I perfectly understand, so that we have more say in how we develop the plan going forward.
This is turning into a very strange meeting. I find myself agreeing with Councillor Holt all the time. And he's agreeing with me. It's just fantastic. Oh, well done. You'll be welcome in the party anytime. As you so rightly say, it's been a fairly intense period, and we had a very short, a dead stop for tomorrow, and to get to this time tonight. However, I think it's very important that we are a democratically accountable council, and that we need to have the views of all members. Now, obviously, we will progress this and report back to full council, but I do take your point, Councillor Holt. this should not be something that is imposed on councillors. It has to be something that is organic. So consequently, I think the political leaders and the chief executive should actually get together and work out what would be the most effective vehicle to do that. As you said, 6 months is not, it seems long, but it isn't. So no holidays for anyone.
Any other questions? Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my understanding of this, I'm just checking that, the government in September are looking for some consensus. That has been their principle throughout this process, such as you can call this a process. We will make our decision, and presumably on the basis of this paper, it's going to come down first to 2 or 3 on this paper, if we agree this paper today. And at some point, we'll have to decide which of those 2 options we face. There's details to go in that. Will we be carrying out, to achieve consensus, discussions across all the councils, and I'm going to stress this, apart from just the administrations being involved, will members have an opportunity to have input? I've already had discussions with colleagues in Ipswich and colleagues in Mid-Suffolk. I don't know anybody in the other councils, sorry. But I do think it's important that if we're going to achieve consensus, that as many members as possible can be included in the process. Before we make our individual decision, can I ask the leader if that's a possibility that we can explore and include in this process? I appreciate the time is limited, but I do think that would be valuable from, again, I'm coming to my point, consensus.
I think it would only be of value to the paper that we put in September if we could show a degree of consensus. I haven't given up hope of a rapprochement with the county. And I also think that we will be putting together a plan on how we deliver the paper on the 26th of September, and who we need to speak to and what input that we need, and that will include councillors. It will also include, because what we're actually looking at here is a transformation of public services. It's not more of the same. We are doing things differently. I hate this sort of language, but, you know, it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity. So we are also going to be canvassing the opinion of a whole variety of authorities who are looking at, for example, the transformation of adult social care, children's services, healthy homes, etc. So as we put together that delivery plan, we should also put in points where councillors can give their views. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holt?
Hopefully the last one. I believe in 2 unitaries. That's where I'll be open. I think most people know my position on that. But colleagues and the county obviously are one. I just don't want us to be in a position where we totally close off and ignore that option. We've got the paper here in front of me, which I'm happy to second. But if we get down the road and we are given 1 unitary, we need to be prepared to be able to understand and focus on the detail of that. As evidence comes forward, as details come forward, we will have a better place to make that judgment. But at the moment, I feel, personally, it's more emotion. I feel strongly that 2 is better. I haven't got the facts, I haven't got the data. None of us have. But I don't want us to totally close off a single unitary, because that could be a dangerous precedent if we do that and it comes back, and that's that's the only option. That's what governments say. We need to be prepared for that. And I just want to hopefully the Chief Exec and the leader can reassure us that we aren't taking our eye off the ball with that. We know it's there, we need to be aware of it, and we need to take note of what county produces evidence-wise, what we produce evidence-wise, because it might be the best option. I don't think it is. It might be. but we just need to be aware of it and keep our eye open to that.
Thank you. Councillor Saul?
Thank you, Councillor Holt. I think the key here is we have done the best that we can do within the limited period of time. We are going to produce a much more detailed piece of work based on evidence. And the evidence is what counts, not our subjective opinions. We may have opinions about, and the Green Party has very strong opinions about community power and being as close. You know, when we talk about devolution, we don't actually think about the mayor in Norwich or Diss or wherever the mayor is going to be. We think about giving power to the smallest entity possible. However, there will be opportunities to have a dialogue with county. I don't think that we should shut the door. And I do believe that if we can put forward, and I believe we can, a powerful combination of evidence, that the government will consider it. Yes, the government would like one response. It may not be possible to give them one response, but we will be having dialogue with county. It would be ridiculous not to.
Thank you. Any more questions before we move to debate? Okay, we'll now move to debate, where councillors will know that they can speak once only and for a total of 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Who wishes to open the debate? Councillor Clover, and then Councillor Dowling.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd really just like to echo Councillor Holt's points made there. I think that at this stage, and given that Councillor Saw is saying that we're looking for a rapprochement with county, that really everything should be on the table at this stage. So to take that out at this stage is really sort of not giving us the chance to fully look at the whole, all of the options that should be on the table here. So I think that I can understand the arguments for multiple unitaries, but then I think we have got to be open-minded to consider the fact that a single unitary is also on the table. Thank you.
Councillor Dowling.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Council for her clear laying out of the situation on LGR. It's clear to me that the government's aims of achieving efficiency savings while promoting local accountability can only be met by a multi-unitary model. I don't want to crush colleagues with too many numbers, but here are a few that you should know. Suffolk is a large county, forecast to grow to around 790,000 people by 2028 when new unitaries take power. The largest counties with a current single unitary are North Yorkshire and Cornwall, which will have populations of 634 and 618,000 by 2028. Suffolk will have at least 150,000 more residents than either of them. For a cautionary tale about the price of going large, as my colleague's already done, let's glance westwards to the single unitary of Somerset. Set-up costs in 2023 came to at least £16.5 million. Their 25-26 budget shows a shortfall of 66 million, despite making savings of 47 million, including savage staffing costs. They've applied to the government for exceptional financial support this year. This is the future to which Suffolk County Council administration wants to lead us. Nor do large unitaries meet the requirement to address local interests and identities. In Suffolk, we have our glorious coast, ever more important for providing energy to the nation. We have our arable heartland, peppered with small market towns and villages. And we have the dense urban area of Ipswich. These all have different needs, identities, and goals. The Minister told the Local Government Chronicle this week that geography matters differently in different places. He mentioned in particular that a very large county across multiple rural areas with small towns and villages is very, very different than some counties. Was he thinking of Suffolk, I wonder? Our residents will clearly be served better by a more obviously local, democratic and accountable arrangement of 2 or 3 unitaries. In a smaller council, all councillors will be able to make the needs and ambitions of their residents heard. But in a single county-wide unitary, individual councillors can easily get lost among the crowd. Just ask our backbench colleagues on Suffolk County Council. The vision of huge efficiency savings can be seen to be an illusion. Just ask the leader of Somerset Council. Ask yourselves whether we should submit to a very obvious power grab by the county administration. The right answer for Suffolk is very obviously the democratic one, a multi-unitary format in which neighbouring councils can collaborate and share services, but which retain their unique community identities. This answer is local, sustainable, simple, sensible, and properly democratic. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Anybody else wishing to enter the debate? Councillor Riley, Councillor Smith, and then Councillor Register. It's debate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, for those who have memories, in 2012, we were looking at this, and the people of Babergh decided they would not merge with the people of Mid-Suffolk. There was a view that Ipswich should be expanded and should include Hadley, and the area of Ipswich would expand from Hadley to the coast. And I think I did see draft maps that showed Ipswich area to include Felixstowe. So if I have a problem with this paper, is there's not enough meat on the bones. People of Pinewood are very concerned about being swallowed by Ipswich. Ditto to people of Kesgrave. And Ipswich's ambitions and other major areas' ambitions are not included in this paper. And I think this is something that we've all got to look forward to, is that people exist as people, not as units. And there is a history here that areas do not want to be absorbed by Ipswich or other areas. And we go back to 2012, the argument always was, if I wanted to be ruled by Ipswich, I'd have moved there instead of moved somewhere else, which is what's happened. So as we go forward, can we please bear in mind that we need a bit more bones before we go forward, meat on the bones before we go forward, and we should focus on the needs of people rather than just on the figures. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Something Councillor Holt said a little while ago put me in mind of Donald Rumsfeld. How do you say it? Rumsfeld. Donald. Remember him anyway. I thought you were going to say Donald Trump. No. If you cast your mind back, the thing he said about known knowns and known unknowns. At the moment, the known unknowns we've got the facts and the data, and the finances. We're building that case. For me, the known knowns are that our residents will be best served by councillors and councils that are closer to them. And it's a known that democratic representation is better, smaller.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Register.
Yes, so to take the discussion earlier about how long it takes to get from Sudbury to from Lowestoft, Newmarket to Lowestoft, that's actually a bad example. The better example is Sudbury to Lowestoft. And if you take away using the car, it's 3 hours. If you go from Newmarket to Lowestoft by train, it's 2.5 hours if you're lucky and you get an easy connection. But Orwell Bridge closed, all bets are off on how long it would take you by car. But that's an example of where geography matters. It's too large a county to be one single unitary, which is why I'm in favour of multiple unitaries. But this government's missed a trick, isn't it? We know that there are arguments about savings in local government, so why not reform how local government is financed? Because they haven't done it, they haven't thought about it. Abandon the sticking plaster fix that was the council tax. It was replacing the community charge, which was fatally and legally flawed and couldn't continue. And they replaced it with this system that hasn't been reviewed since. We haven't had a revaluation of properties, ever. And it's just nonsense. The whole system, so, you know, a mansion in Kensington pays less than a 2 up, 2 down in Burnley. Daft. But it means that the finances of councils are in a mess. So how do you replace it? You can replace it with a local income tax, as they do abroad, or you could use a land value tax. Here's a really interesting thing about land value taxes, because you punish people who own land who don't develop it. All those land banking development companies or housing developers will be forced to either pay councils, the unitaries or the strategic authority, lots of money, or sell them, so that somebody who does want to develop that land can and will. Solves 2 problems in one go. But they haven't thought about this. They're just thinking, how much money can we save? And if that's their decision making at the end of the day, it's a lost opportunity. And it's an opportunity that was last had in 1974, remember. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like Councillor Dowling, I've been looking up the stats for various unitary authorities that currently exist. Interestingly, the vast majority of them appear to fall in the range of representing 380,000 to down to 280,000, which is pretty much in the range we are talking about here with the 2 or 3 unitaries. But what I want to focus on now is something that hasn't been discussed, which is the councillor workload. It's been touched upon, but I'm actually talking about the practicalities. Now, as it is, as a district councillor, you learn a skill set. It takes a year or 2 to work your way in. Everybody here has now got up to a year or 2, so you're all expected to be brilliant, by the way. County councillor workload would be a different skill set, different things to understand. We might know a little bit about it. Some of us have been twin hatters. It's not going to be that easy. Now, there are currently about 300 councillors, and with the proposed changes for Suffolk County Council, that would be at 303, I think. So the workload for our existing councillors, so there are 233 district and borough councillors at the moment, is the question of how much does that workload have to increase just at the district level for it to become untenable. We know it's difficult to encourage people to stand for election simply because younger people, more diverse people, do not have the time. Consequently, we tend to get, can I put it nicely, more elderly people with time on their hands, and perhaps people who've got enough money under the belt or whatever to be able to afford to go into public service. The danger of this is if we have too few councillors, not only will we not have the people to do the actual work, but we won't have the people to choose from to do the actual work. I think that's an important principle. I've looked at possibilities of trebling the workload. That is, you'd be taking on double the size, an award, plus you'd be taking on responsibilities as a district council that were previously a county council. Double for the area and a bit of a treble for doing county council functions as well. We can only spread ourselves too thin before we become ineffective and we become unrepresentative of the population at large. So I do think this is a point we should be looking at during this process. I thought it should be mentioned. That sounds very selfish. it's all about us. It's not. It's about how we can best serve our residents.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We'll just follow on from Councillor McGraw. It's not about saving money. It's all about people. It's not about ourselves. But a lot of what your comments I agree with. A lot of them were said at the County Council meeting that we had, where this was all thrashed out. And I have to say, I'm disappointed that we've decided to, we'll decide to go for 2 or possibly 3, but that's your right. And the County Council tells me that they have to plan also for those options. They can't just look at the one that they're going forward on. They've got to have a backup plan for the others. There's lots of evidence that they told us at the time. Lots of the comments we heard at the meeting. I think I have to be quite clear here, Madam Chairman. I did support the One Suffolk. I've always supported One Suffolk, way back to 2012. I've felt that's always been the best direction to go. And hopefully you'll come to see that that will be the way to go forward. I'm not saying that you're wrong or right. I'm only saying that I cannot support this evening. But I do respect all your views. I do understand that the bottom line is that it is the people we serve. I think they'll be better served by a one authority. But that's my view. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Owen and then Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that if we ended up going for 1 unitary, all we'd have is retired people in there. We wouldn't have a diverse people. And we do need younger people. I believe democracy, and the smaller the units, the better. And I do believe in 3, and I believe that Sproughton and Pinewood, I mean, I know you said about Ipswich, but I believe they are Ipswich. So I've got a thing. If I say Pinewood, I think Ipswich, but that's my opinion. That's because I live in Sudbury. So there you go. I do believe in a 3 unitary, and democracy I do believe in.
Thank you. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of things. First of all, in response to Councillor McCraw's assertions about people having spare time and plenty of money under their belts, and looking to this side of the chamber particularly, I can assure him that that's not the case for all of us. I'm 65 on Saturday, and I have 5 jobs. I need them all. Spare time is not one of the things that's in consideration for getting younger people, and in fact, one of the factors for having younger people involved is that we need to have some of these positions as higher paid, higher status jobs, which is why you're only going to get younger people if you're paying enough, a bit like MPs perhaps. Now, this might sound like a turkey voting for Christmas, because it's not going to happen to me, is it? Okay. Okay. I will not be here. However, one of the things I have to say, there are many very, very good arguments for this 2 or 3, but I'm extremely disappointed that we really have not been presented with the possibility of 1 to vote for now. Because the thing that concerns me most of all is the 3 main core statutory requirements of provision by existing county services, namely education, social care and transport. And although these matters were addressed somewhat vaguely in the paper, I just feel that there hasn't been enough attention paid to this, and given that we're thinking about things that we address here as a district council at the moment, but we're not thinking about enough, I think, about the core statutory services that are covered by Suffolk County Council as a whole now. And I think that's really important, because these are, as I've said I said at the last meeting, they're statutory, they're important, they support the most vulnerable people. And how are we going to get a policy which covers 2 or 3 unitary authorities to take into account a transport policy, a social care policy, and a special educational needs policy, and all those policies? How are we going to get a whole strategy around those 3 core areas? And so, yes, all these things that we say about being close to our constituents and our residents and our businesses, yes, that's great, but what about the really, really important core services that we have to consider, and which is why I'm a bit disappointed that we are not considering 1, 2 or 3 and putting the detail later. We're being given the option only of 1 or 2. I think at the working group meeting that we, 2 or 3, I think at the working group meeting that I went to in Hadley, I was one of the only people who was happy to be considering 1. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Carter?
Thank you. So I am in favour of multiple, but I do agree with you in that perhaps it would have been the right thing to do to have given the option of 1, 2 or 3. Even though I don't necessarily agree with it, I don't believe that bigger is always better. And a single Suffolk would be the 3rd largest county by geographical size, which to me is just too large, and you would lose the voices of the local people, towns, parishes. Suffolk covers such a wide variety, and I believe that the rural areas would get swallowed up by the urban areas. I know the villages close by, they, as has already been mentioned, don't want to get sucked into Ipswich. And who would? You would lose your voice. Our interim policy rightly supports multiple unitaries. It ensures stronger local representation, more responsive decision making, and greater accountability. But beyond the structure, as I sort of mentioned in my question, I think we have to be open and honest with the public, with the residents whose lives it is going to affect. I would like to see full public consultations, online, in person, however possible, shout it from the rooftops. Communication is key. But I think what we have to do at the heart of all of this, and the main point of all of this, is to support democracy. That's why we're all here, and that's how it all works. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I've listened to a lot of the debate and bided my time as to what I would think, and it just seems that Suffolk needs to have the diverse elements matched up with appropriate district autonomy to self-govern and for the people. And that's where I agree with Councillor Beer. It is about the people. We may disagree on one unitary authority, but I think we will always see that people are mattering. And to do this, the diverse elements will keep coming. Newmarket now with its huge clamour for horse racing, its diversity there. The Gateway 14 project, the Shotley Peninsula, of course. We will see what happens with Ipswich and the Greater Authority. I think that's for another day. I think in general we should look to seeing our diverse elements work together in partnership. It's tailor-made for it. Thank you.
Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with a lot of that's been said this evening. A couple of points. The first thing is the elephant in the room, of course, is the combined authority that's going to be following as well. This isn't just about changing local government reorganisation in Suffolk, but this is over 2 counties. This is going to be an reorganisation of the likes we've not seen before. and the strategic things like public transport, SEND provision, the police authority, all of those will become part of the mayoral duties as well. So we need to do that. I'm very much a supporter. Personally, I'm torn between the 2 and the 3. I'm being selfish in terms of the Shotley Peninsula. Do we go with the greater Ipswich area, or do we go with the east, Felixstowe? I've spoken to some colleagues over in Felixstowe and Ipswich. They both saying, "Oh, we want you with us." So the lobbying's already begun, which is absolutely fine. In terms of the single unitary, I 100% agree. I believe that the people are better served by the more local, democratically elected councillors. And I think also going forward that this is the first step, and we're in step with the other four district councils. And I think that's important, that the district councils are unified in their voice and what they want to go forward with, whether that's 2, 3. The one I'm ruling out, having looked at all the figures, having been to the meetings, Arthur and his team have been, and the leaders have been brilliant in getting the message across to us as councillors, to officers and know the meetings, to the public. And again, there's another one tomorrow morning, which I'm sure everyone will be attending in one way or another, either in Stowmarket or online. And in terms of the single unitary, I think just beware. We know, and I'm sorry to say it because it was disgraceful, the disinformation that come out of Suffolk County Council over the library service. We need to be careful we're not sucked in to those facts and figures that are presented. So I'm very much in favour of a multi-unitary going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I think that, Councillor, have you not spoken? Oh well, do please.
Yeah, probably. Right. Democracy. I think that's the key to everything. I think we all agree on that. And no matter what unitary we end up with, it will be democratic. Members will be elected by residents in their local communities. Councillor Davis touched on Shotley and the possibility of boundary changes. I think going forward in our mapping, we've tried to keep it very simple, but that certainly is something that's got to be considered with multiple unitaries. I don't think we can go in half-cocked and go, we want 2 unitaries, we'll keep the boundaries as they are, because I don't think that makes sense. Not to those residents in those potentially affected areas or the residents wider afield. But it is all about the people. It's all about giving them representation. I said earlier, I believe that is through 2 unitaries, but I also feel that it's on who is elected to represent those people. That is how they get representation. If they elect the right people stand and come forward, those people have a duty to represent them. And I'm sure whatever way we end up, and I hope, I wish, and I really hope that those people who are elected, no matter what we end up with, do a bloody good job, because our residents deserve it. And I think we should support whatever we truly believe in, push that forward, whether it be 1, 2 or 3. But the bottom line is it's what's best for the residents. And we'll come to our conclusion, we'll have an answer, and we will do our best to implement and support it as and when it comes forward. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Or would you like to add anything to what's been said in debate?
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the things that we should remember is that all the districts and the borough have done tremendous work over the last 10 years. We have saved £330 million while still delivering high quality services. I think we need to focus on, yes, this is a big, ambitious goal, transforming local government. But we should also recognise that there are some very big problems that this county, like many counties, has to deal with. And currently, we all know that adult social care is not working. It's not because people don't want to do the best job, it's becoming almost overwhelming as we currently deliver it. Now, I would also had hoped that the government wouldn't have instituted a review of adult social care, which isn't going to report till 2028, whilst the rest of us are trying to reorganise local government. But there are certain things that give me hope. The government is focused on neighbourhood health. It is focused on prevention in a whole range of areas. If we look at what we're doing currently, we are delivering preventative help in our districts. We recently celebrated the 5-year anniversary of the COVID lockdown. Who actually delivered for residents during the lockdown? It was district councils. We can do this, but what we have to do is be ambitious and look at everything and say, just because we've delivered it this way in the past, we cannot deliver it like this in the future. I would also hope that the government, at the same time as we're doing this work, would realise, and I think it does realise, that the system of local government financing is broken. And overlaying this reorganisation without fixing the foundations of local government finance may ensure that the future is difficult. So I would hope that that would happen. But we have this opportunity to redesign services from the ground up. It's not just about saving the money, but if we redesign services properly, we can make the savings and we can deliver a financially sustainable council. If we do not believe that we can do that, then we should not go down this road. I am all for multiple unitaries. We still have a lot of work to do. We are willing to listen to as many voices as we can, because I think that will be a strength of what we produce. I know I've reiterated this on more than one occasion. I would love to have had more time to produce a fuller paper. We didn't have the time. And what actually does alarm me somewhat is the amount of work that has to go into this, the amount of officer time, and we still have to run the council day to day. Let's not forget that. So I would ask all of you in this room, councillors and officers, to recognise that this may have been a surprise to us, we may not have liked it initially, but we are going to have to make it work. And I think multiple unitaries will make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saw. I'll now ask the office.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress for this item. Councillor Beer, may I take your vote, please?
I'm against, because I'm in favour of 1 Suffolk. Thank you.
I do apologise, members. I started the wrong vote.
Yeah. That's okay.
Sorry, members. I do apologise. We should now be on the correct vote. Thank you. It's okay, Councillor Rees. We can reset the vote for the next item. It will be deleted and there will be no record. Councillor Beer, may I take your vote, please? On this item, please.
I'm in favour of 1 Suffolk, so I'm against this.
You're against this vote. Thank you. Councillor Riley. Thank you. Thank you, members. So that is 21 votes for, 3 against and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's carried. Yeah. Now moving on to paper BC 2449, Community Infrastructure Levy, better known as SIL. Proposed revised SIL charging rates for consultation purposes. For Babergh District Council and Mid-Suffolk District Council as SIL charging authorities for their administrative areas. We have in the chamber Stuart Cook, Viability Consultant of Urban Consulting Limited, Philip Isbell, Acting Director of Planning, Christine Thurlow, Professional Lead, Key Sites and Infrastructure, and Joe Moy, Senior Infrastructure Finance Officer. I would now like Councillor Davis to recommend this paper to the Chamber.
Shall I just sit down and go home?
Advanced criticism there.
Yes. I'm asking Council to follow the recommendations in paragraph 3.1 and 3.2 of the report to agree to a period of consultation on raising the rates of community infrastructure levy charged to developers. The recommendations agree that Babergh District Council will take into account the results of the consultation and will then take its proposals to the planning inspector. SIL was introduced in 2016, and at that time Babergh and Mid-Suffolk stated they would not increase the rates charged to developers for 3 years. The initial rate had been tested for viability on the part of property developers. But for various reasons, including the COVID pandemic and the splitting of the joint local plan into 2 parts, the SIL rates were not increased in 2020 and have stayed at the same level, although there is an index-linked rise each year. So it's 9 years since the SIL rates were set, and we're now proposing to raise the rate outside the index-linked increases for the first time. In that 9 years, the costs of infrastructure have risen. For example, the cost per pupil of places in education has risen. The cost for one high school place for a school expansion has risen from £22,738 per pupil in 2020 to £29,939 now. We have also recently received a 5-year plan from Suffolk County Council which outlines the needs for education, cycling and walking, waste and libraries infrastructure. If we are to meet any reasonable requests from Suffolk County Council and still have funds for community projects, we will need to raise our SIL rates. We're also proposing to restructure the rates, as will be seen in the tables in the report. We will have lower and higher rate geographical zones for housing, with SIL charges for both age-limited elderly accommodation and extra care accommodation. However, there would be no charges for all flats, all types of retail development, offices, industrial warehouse, and all other uses. This is because we believe these properties would not be viable if SIL was charged. Our viability consultant reports that we're not being greedy or unreasonable. Viability testing took place in November 2024 and shows that we are justified in asking developers to pay more cash for infrastructure to support their developments. The increases will not render developments undeliverable. Communities are rightly concerned that infrastructure must be put in place to support housing development, and this will become increasingly important as we face pressure to deliver more and more housing. We must be able to build this infrastructure, and these increased rates will allow us to do so. So we propose to go to a 6-week consultation starting in late April and going through to May 2025. The proposed increases will then be submitted to the planning inspector. As always, I would like to thank the officers and our viability consultant for their careful and painstaking work on this matter. And I ask you that you follow the recommendations in the report at paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Smith. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Barker to clarify certain points.
Just for the avoidance of doubt, given that the County Council was raised and mentioned, and I'm conscious that SIL funds go directly to town and parish councils, any councillors who are a member of the County Council or members of town and parish councils, or whether it be a health body or other bodies that access SIL funding potentially, you have dispensation to be able to speak and contribute to the debate. Thank you.
As you know, councillors, you can ask as many as you like, but it must be a question on the topic. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question regarding paragraph 4.16, which addresses an update of strategic sites for Babergh, specifically Chiltern Woods, an area around east of Sudbury, Great Cornard, Lady Lane, Hadley, Babergh, Ipswich Fringe, and specifically the Brantham Regeneration area. These have previously been strategic sites that did not attract any SIL money. Am I correct in thinking that under the new scheme, they will not be removed from SIL? In other words, SIL in those locations will be chargeable, because obviously if you get development in those areas, that's already been dealt with. I just want to make sure that we can actually charge SIL for development in these areas. I wonder if somebody could help me with that.
Yeah, no, I'll ask Christine. Yeah, Christine.
Thank you. If you're talking about building out the existing sites according to the existing permissions, they would be able to do that and not pay SIL. If there are revised proposals which come forward which intensify numbers of dwellings, then that would be different.
It was the latter case, new developments, new applications. So as of now, they are SIL chargeable. Or as of these proposals, they will be SIL chargeable.
So we have a process to go through here. So we do the consultation, we collect the representations, we take those forward into the planning inspectorate. That might take the whole of this year to do. We then have modifications or an acceptance by an inspector. It then comes back to you to decide, are you going to adopt new rates? So that could be spring next year. And within that period, the existing rates apply. Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Riley, then Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I just take everybody to the bottom of page 49? Whereas the proposed rates for extra care accommodation is £250 per square metre, which is the highest rate for all categories. Could I get some clarification as to how we've arrived at this £250 and why we're at this level in comparative terms?
Yeah, so in terms of setting the proposed rates, we've undertaken a viability exercise in terms of all the uses set out. Each use has been undertaken in terms of the same viability exercise in terms of a residual appraisal. And the main driver in terms of viability will be looking at the values for those particular uses. And based upon our research, it was those particular uses which achieve a premium in terms of values, hence be able to levy a higher charge.
You go and then Councillor Saw.
Glad you got the priority right there, Chair. Thank you very much. You say this will be charged to developers, but we know that it's the house buying public that actually pay the cost of SIL. Have you worked out how much extra this will add to the cost of an average house?
Yeah. Well, so in terms of the actual payment of CIL, as is pointed out, the CIL is levied as a tax on development, so it's the developer who pays for the CIL. So it's not automatically added to the house price, because the whole concept is that all costs are taken into account when the developer are paying for land. And it's clear in terms of planning practice guidance, when we're testing viability, that we need to reflect all development costs, including CIL, in terms of the land value. So it's having a depressing effect in terms of land value, rather than adding a cost in terms of the price of the house. And in terms of the actual uplift proposed, it's about a sort of a 30% uplift in terms of the current index-linked CIL charge. So that's going to be the uplift in terms of the actual cost itself.
Okay. Councillor Busby?
No, Chair. So the answer was you don't think the house prices will go up at all. You're pitching that the land values will go down to cover the extra money that we're raising from CIL. But land uses have changed since we started this. There really was only agriculture or housing development that could compete on a piece of land. But now we've seen hundreds of solar farm applications and other commercial applications that have a direct impact on the value of that land. And some would say that the solar farm will get much more than they will from house. So what is the incentive for developers to try and get a lower value of the land when they're dealing with farmers who can see that there are other alternatives where they can increase their income rather than shrink it?
So, in terms of land uses, that's going to be set out in terms of the part 2 of the local plan, in terms of where development's going, okay? So, in terms of a competition, in terms of alternative uses, that'll be clearly set out in the part 2 of the local plan. And understand your concerns in terms of it adding in terms of overall sales values. But as I said, if you look at table 5.7 of my report, which sets out in terms of prices being paid in the local market at this stage, I think it's quite clear in terms of how CIL was assessed before and the land prices used in that assessment compared to now, that there's been a clear downward trend in terms of the price of land. And as I say, in terms of overall guidance, in terms of setting CIL, we have to assess it in terms of having an impact in terms of land value itself, but still provide a reasonable return. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the individual landowner how they bring that site forward in terms of a solar farm or alternative uses. But it will be up to part of the local plan in terms of the sites themselves being assessed in terms of the type of uses coming forward.
Councillor Busby?
I'll save it for debate if I may.
Okay. Councillor Saw, then Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Chair. No, in your introduction, Councillor Davies, you said that our CIL rates were competitive with other areas. Is that other neighbouring areas, or because obviously CIL rates would have an effect on where developers might wish to take sites forward?
I'll pass that over, please. Yeah.
Well, the nearest CIL charging authority is East Suffolk. They have a zonal approach. They've just been out and revised their CIL rates, and their rates vary in different areas. They have more zones than we do that are proposed, and the rates vary from £100 plus to £300. So we are not at the highest level that they are, but all of the rates are determined on viability considerations and are down to localised issues. And you may or may not be familiar with sort of house prices which are on the coast, which are extremely high.
Thank you. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You state here strategic broad location for growth east of Sudbury, Great Cornard. My question is, will the SIL payments be on a development site, or will this be on an individual site? You know, the person has saved money, managed to buy a little plot of land, they want to build a house. Is this going to affect them? And my second question would be, if it is, how much is it going to affect them? Because otherwise you're just putting a tax on people buying homes.
So in table 4.5, you've got the existing rates, which go down to one dwelling. And in the proposal going forward at table 4.8, you've got, sorry, I haven't got paginated. Yeah, thank you. So in table 4.8, you've got a series of charges which also go down to one dwelling but could relate to a much bigger number of dwellings. You may be aware that there are exemptions that can be applied for affordable housing, and there can be exemptions applied for self-build. So not every proposal that has a number against it actually ends up paying that number, but the important thing is that if there are exemptions to be applied for, they have to be applied for and agreed before a spade goes in the ground. If that doesn't happen, then we can't issue exemptions under the legislation. So it's a very process-driven vehicle, really, to receive SIL.
Councillor Beer?
Yes, I know you come back on that. I think I follow what you're saying, but we do know that some people have started building and then realise that they've got to pay SIL, but that's too late because they've put the spade in the ground. So what you're really saying is that 99% of all these homes being built will be liable to SIL, because certainly at the moment, not so many are, but from reading this, a lot more will fall into that bracket. And I think really it's just a tax, Madam Chairman.
Sorry, I can't actually confirm whether it would be 99%. We do have a lot of debt recovery that we do, where people tell us that they're going to be self-build, and then we find that the property goes on the market after it's completed and people don't tell us. So the number fluctuates and varies, but the legislation is there. We have little discretion over it, but we always start our debt recovery processes with a conversation, because without that you can't resolve the debt. We also do briefings to parishes, and parishes quite often tell us about things which are not quite as they should be. So, and as you're probably all aware, those that are on planning committee, there are always changes made to approved plans, and we have to respond to all of those. So it is a very dynamic environment that we're working in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beard, do you wish to come back? Ask another?
Just to say thank you very much, and I know how difficult it is, but at the end of the day, the person buying the home is going to pay more. Thank you.
Lovely. Anyone else for question? No? Right, we'll now move to debate. And again, you're allowed to speak once and for a duration of 3 minutes, which will be timed. Who wishes to open the debate? Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Chairman, I apologise. Actually, I just want to say one thing about SIL. The discussion about SIL, this is infrastructure, and in large part, it replaces the money that was previously supplied through Section 106, which involved long, complicated legal arguments, which you could not change after development had been completed. And I have to say, the whole SIL process, the project over the years since 2016, that we've been carrying this out, has been a huge success. Okay? We have given out millions of pounds of money. Parish councils and town councils have received their own SIL money That has been incredibly useful. It has a lot of flexibility built into it. We annually review the basis on which our SIL scheme works, what we will allow, what we won't allow, what we require. This is something to support. The fact we've not been able, not deliberately, but not been able to review our SIL rates for 9 years is just an accident of fate. But it has always been subject to review. And the funny thing is, I don't think developers have made a great protests about having to pay SIL, because for them, they have a fixed cost. They know what they have going into it. I'm sorry to hear that some of them didn't know that they were going to have to pay SIL money. That's, I'm afraid, a little bit of a fault on their side. But we do tell people, so we should definitely make this recommendation, because after all, it's going out to the builders, to the developers, for consultation, so they can make their points, and if there are areas that we need to tweak, we have that opportunity. So I don't see any reason to oppose this. It is simply a matter of fact of life that has served the communities across Babergh and Mid-Suffolk very well indeed.
Councillor Holt?
Yeah, like Councillor McCraw, I think SIL's been a fantastic thing since it was introduced, and has developed and produced loads of projects throughout the district, both districts actually, that otherwise wouldn't have been delivered. But one thing I harp on about with SIL is that on the big infrastructure projects, we allocate the money, it sits there, and then county eventually decide whether they want to do something in the area that that money was allocated for, or move it somewhere else. And we've got quite a few developments that have come forward, and those big infrastructure things haven't been developed. There's schools that don't seem to be developed in the right place. There's doctors that don't ever seem to be developed. We know we have problems filling doctors, don't get me wrong, with doctors themselves. There's road junction improvements. Things that SIL's allocated for, there's some in the papers, but they don't come forward, and we lose all control because it's a county decision. And it might be the housing numbers aren't right, or they've revalued, or their figures have changed because the models have changed, and they no longer fall into the category of being done. So that's the biggest downside, I think. Once the plan of permission is done, the money's allocated, we lose control, and the things that we think are coming with developments don't happen. So that's the only thing I'd like to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Davis, would you like to add anything?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. We'll now move to the electronic vote by asking the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to proceed. Okay. Sorry, did I miss you, Councillor Busby? Did you wish to enter debate?
I thought we missed the debate all in. We went from questions to the vote. I didn't...
No.
Were we?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, I was asleep. Only to say that I think I will support this, because I trust the people that have been involved in this do a fantastic job, and I think they wouldn't be proposing stuff if it wasn't valid. It does concern me that we're going into a new local plan where we're going to ask, or we're going to be demanded to increase the number of houses we build a year from 416 to something like 763. And we're going to be telling landowners that they're going to have to accept less for their land going forward. And I just wonder how's that going to balance out? We haven't yet had a call for sites for the new local plan, so it could be that we don't get sufficient land to be able to develop and build the 763 houses a year. So I would request, the one thing that I would request, is that we do review this quicker than the 9 years or 6 years or whatever it was it took to do this time. And we look at it within a couple or 3 years maximum, when we know what's happening with the local plan and how it's working, because it would be silly to stick with something which isn't necessarily going to work. Thank you.
Else? No, I can move to the vote. So will the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office please conduct the electronic vote?
Thank you, members. The vote is now in progress for this item. Councillor Beer, may I take your vote, please?
Reluctantly approve.
4. Thank
Yep.
you. Councillor Riley? Against. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 24 votes for, 1 vote against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, so that has been carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to paper BC 2450, Babergh Biodiversity and Trees Supplementary Planning Document for adoption. I will invite Councillor Davis, Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce paper BC 2450 and to move the recommendations therein.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present this report, which recommends that the Council's first Biodiversity and Trees Supplementary Planning Document is now adopted. This is a guidance document to support the policies in our joint local plan. I'm extremely proud that this supplementary planning document sets out a clear series of actions and expectations on new developments in Babergh and puts habitat protection and enhanced biodiversity at the heart of council decision making. This is a testament to the hard work and dedication of our expert staff and fellow councillors who've worked to ensure sustainability is at the heart of everything we do, so we can continue to make our district greener and resilient for future generations. The UK is one of the world's most nature-depleted countries, with 1 in 6 UK species at risk of being lost and the majority of important habitats in poor condition, impacting climate change, flooding, water quality and air quality. In Babergh, we face the pressures of increasing house building and energy projects. It is essential that we protect our nature and help it recover. We can also be very proud of the role we play with this SPD and also our ambition in making habitat protection and improving biodiversity a priority for this council. I'm proud that in this document we will expect developers to deliver at least 20% biodiversity net gain on developments. This is above the national minimum set by government. However, we agree with Suffolk Wildlife Trust that 20% biodiversity net gain is the only way to make development truly nature positive and to help reverse wildlife loss. As one expert told the BBC, we have entered the 6th mass extinction. Based on our research and what we're seeing, the extinction crisis is so bad that whatever we do in the next 10 to 50 years is what will define the future of humanity. Restoring and improving biodiversity is not an optional extra, and it's encouraging in our consultation process that there is broad agreement about this guidance in the SPD. In terms of the detail of the report, the SPD sets out further guidance in detail on the ways in which development proposals are required to meet the requirements of the Environment Act and National Planning Policy Framework. It also encourages applicants to protect, conserve, restore and enhance locally relevant natural habitats and ecological features on their sites, and to create new habitats as part of a high-quality design. We consulted on this SPD between the 15th of May and the 19th of June last year for a period of 5 weeks, and we received the views from 22 individuals and groups. There were 122 specific comments in total. 4 of the responses were from members of the public. We had 5 from developers and agents, 4 from other councils, 3 from amenity bodies such as the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, the Woodland Trust and Historic England, 1 each from Sproughton, what's that? How do you say that? Broughton Parish Council and Sudbury Area Greenbelt Group, and 4 from statutory agencies, Environment Agency, Defence, Anglia Water. The comments as a whole were helpful and favourable, and we've carefully examined each of the comments received and set out our responses. The main changes, as you can see in the document, have been made to the biodiversity net gain section on how it will be applied. Further clarity is provided on how we will consider offsetting sites where BNG cannot be delivered on site, but our preference is that this should be as close to the development site as possible. We've also changed the legal requirements for monitoring and reporting off-site BNG. The reference to monitoring fees have been removed to enable more detailed consideration of cost to the council. There's also amendments to the Habitats Regulations Mitigation section, and there's further reference on the rather wonderful Norfolk and Suffolk Local Nature Recovery Strategy and its relevance to BNG. This is a hugely detailed piece of work, and I pay tribute to the highly knowledgeable, thorough and dedicated officers who've worked on this SPD. I now ask Council to agree the recommendations in paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2 and approve for adoption the supplementary planning document on biodiversity and trees, and to allow the Head of Strategic Planning in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Planning to make minor amendments if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dowling. We now move to questions. You can ask as many questions as you wish, but they must be pertinent to the motion before you. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to ask, on page 449, the 22 organisations or individuals, am I missing something, or was the National Landscape consulted? The AONB, as we would know them.
Ask the officers. Oh, yes, they were consulted.
They were. Apparently. They're not listed here, so. Thank you.
For you, Madam Chair. All that's listed there are the people who responded to the consultation. So a lot more were consulted, but these are the people who chose to respond to the consultation. Sorry. What we've listed here are the people who responded to the consultation. So we consulted a lot more people who came back.
Okay. Councillor Jamieson and then Councillor Carruthers.
I had a historic development in one of my villages. It was during the last council, but the landscape strategy or landscape plan on that development stipulated that the site could be cleared with glyphosate before any development commenced. Now, I couldn't see any mention of weed killers of any sort in the biodiversity plan, but obviously that would have an effect on biodiversity, and I wondered, have I missed something, or is that not being considered?
Yeah, I know there's something in the document about conserving things that are already there rather than blitzing them, but I'm sure one of the officers may be able to help me on that.
Sorry. Could you repeat the question?
I have had a development where glyphosate is stated in the landscape plan that glyphosate would be used to clear the site of weeds prior to development starting. It's an old one that's been built out now, but I've just wondered, that's not mentioned. I couldn't see that weed killers or anything mentioned in the SPD, so I just wondered if that had been taken into account, the effects.
Thank you, Councillor. It probably doesn't go into that kind of level of detail. It's probably something that we can have a conversation. I mean, in broad terms, what we're looking here is kind of evidence from the development that it will generate and put back in the ground what's been taken out. In fact, a bit more, as Councillor Davis says, up to 20%. So, but we'll have details of the proposals that each development site is seeking to justify for us. So that's probably a bit more detail than we expect to see here, but it's something certainly that we can, so the use of kind of weed killers, something that we can take away and have a think about.
Okay, Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. My question concerns section 4.17 about statutory biodiversity credits, specifically on page 481, 4.18, stacking. I don't really understand what stacking is. It says there are opportunities for additional schemes to be stacked on top of another for the same parcel of land, which could include BNG and other ecosystem services such as carbon credits or nutrient neutrality. And I was just wondering how that works. Thank you.
I mean, stacking is a term that DEFRA has kind of used, and I think it's seeking to combine grant subsidies in order that they can have the kind of the biggest impact at a kind of combined level. So, I mean, the example that we have is kind of nutrient credits, which are paid, I think, by DEFRA as well. So, I think the sense is that by partners kind of working together and combining all those different sources of money, that you can probably have a quicker and speedier kind of environmental kind of impact on a site. So it's a practice that is actively encouraged.
Thank you. So it would mean that really you could have a site that would have more biodiversity because it's got more input from various different things. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can we go to page 449, please? And the 22 organisations responding to our consultations. About 2/3 of the way down of the list, we have a reference to pigeon. One, and I really wonder whether there was an individual pigeon, whether this is a pigeon organisation, like racing pigeons or pigeon fanciers, whether they consulted other avian bodies, and why we discriminated against dogs.
Pigeon is they are developers, aren't they? Yeah.
Through you, just to confirm, yes, Pigeon are a firm of land promoters, amongst other things, and developers, and that's our abbreviation for them here.
Councillor Riley?
I think that there's a difficulty. Sorry, let me stand.
Yes.
There's a difficulty here because the officers down that end, and we're all down this end, and we don't. And and the officers, quite understandably, are not trained to speak in public. In fact, communications is generally not one of their skills. So,
Chairman, if I may, thank you, Councillor Riley, but I think if you can restrict making comments about the performance of officers, I would be grateful. Thank you.
And could you please make it a question rather than a...
Tell me about the pigeon.
Can't hear the councillor.
No. Councillor Busby.
Well, Brian, you ought to know that Pigeon are landowners and developers right on the border of Pinewood. They own lots of, they did own tracts of land, particularly around Worsted and that area. So right on the border with Pinewood.
Thank you very much for helping us out. Anyone else with a question? No? I'll now move to debate. You have 3 minutes. You can only speak once, and it will be timed. Who wishes to open the debate? Don't all rush. Councillor Macron, then Councillor Busby.
I think this is a no-brainer. It's been out for consultation. It's got a response. It's 22 people. Others were asked, didn't reply. I think this is a no-brainer and we should move straight to the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Busby, did you want to say anything?
Only very briefly that it's just as well that we're not printing out these minutes, these reports that we get anymore. 658 pages times 30 odd people. We'd never achieve 20% biodiversity.
Thank you. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress for this item. Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please? Against. Against. Councillor Beer?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Heron, may I take your vote, please?
Yes, it's for. My apologies, I have to leave now. Brent Healy calls, I'm afraid.
So vote is
Thank
for. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 25 votes for and 1 against.
I'm thinking of asking Tom Barker, Chief Operating Officer, to put forward his recommendation, and as soon as that's concluded we have a 5-minute break, or do you want to have a 5-minute break now? Carry on?
All three items are quite short.
Okay. So, I now ask Tom Barker to introduce his recommendation, his paper.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief and I will try to speak up. The councillors are required to produce a pay policy statement. This pay policy statement includes a policy on the level and elements of remuneration for each chief officer. Chief officers essentially covers your senior leadership team. The remuneration of the council's lowest paid employees, the relationship between the remuneration of the council's chief officers and other officers, and other specific aspects of chief officers' remuneration, use of performance-related pay, bonuses, etc. To confirm, no changes have been made to the policies within Appendix A since last year. The recommendations ask that you approve the pay policy statement and note last year's gender pay gap. And just to note, our Head of HR and OD, Suzanne Hughes, is with us in the room today and is available to answer specific questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a seconder, please, or do I have to have a proposer? Oh, Councillor Saw, you propose and then I need a seconder. But I would ask members that if they're asking questions or in debate, that they do not personalise any aspect of their argument. Okay? Councillor Davis, you seconding? Thank you very much. We'll now move to questions. Again, you can ask as many as you wish, but they must be pertinent to the subject, and they must not be of a personal or commercial nature. Questions? Councillor Carter?
Hello, thank you. Can you explain how this pay policy compares to those of similar-sized councils, and are there plans to adjust remuneration based on performance benchmarks?
End of the question there. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
How does this pay policy compare to those of similar-sized councils, and are there plans to adjust remuneration based on performance benchmarks?
So we don't work with performance-related pay. So there is a process whereby increments are applied at the end of each year. And I say based on performance. So if somebody is under any act of grievance, disciplinary or capability, then there may be potential not to increase that increment, but it's normally when it's at a formal stage. So if it's an informal stage, then the increment would normally apply. So that applies to everybody on an annual basis. So they move through the spinal column points within a pay grade on an annual basis. The salaries are also increased in line with NJC recommendations, which is across all of local government, across the sector, on an annual basis as well. In terms of how it compares, it compares well. We did a pay and reward review. You may not have been at council at the time, but we carried out a substantial pay and reward review across all of the council, which we concluded in November 2023, and that was backdated to April 2023. And we did quite a lot of benchmarking at that stage to understand our pay across nationally and across joint councils as well. And we also evaluated all of the roles of all of our officers using a national scheme to ensure that we were giving fair and consistent pay across the organisation. Does that answer the question? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Saw?
Yes. From time to time, it has been mooted that perhaps, as regards the senior leadership team, that Cabinet have most interaction with, that members of Cabinet should actually contribute to their performance evaluation. I know that several Cabinet members have put this forward. So I would be grateful if any officer could actually tell me whether this is an unusual request for councils or whether it is increasingly becoming the norm.
I'm happy to take that one. As the leader will be aware, that's been common practice in relation to my annual assessments for a number of years, and I'm more than happy that we introduce the same for the wider senior leadership team, as the leader says, in conjunction with Cabinet members. I can't comment on whether that is the norm elsewhere, but it seems perfectly reasonable as part of a wider 360-degree assessment in terms of people's appraisals.
Can we move to debate, please? Again, you have 3 minutes. You can only speak once, and it must be relevant and nothing personal or commercial. Who would like to open the debate? Don't all rush. Councillor McCraw.
Once again, Chair, I think this is a process we go through every year. The figures are in line, they're updated, it's subject to a certain amount of independent study, benchmarking and all the rest, and I think we should just move straight to the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Saw?
Yes, I will be brief. As regards the reporting of the gender pay gap, I note that we will be producing this by the end of the month, which is coming quite soon. Given that we are a cabinet which is 50% female, obviously this is a source of some interest to us. Will this be sent round to councillors? Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Now I shall ask, anybody else on the debate, or can we move to the vote?
If I can, just quickly.
Yes, okay. Tom's going to say a few words.
Very few words. Just conscious that this meeting is being live streamed, and the live stream may not have picked up the nod in response to that question. The answer is yes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm now asking the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress for this item. Councillor Riley, may I take your votes, please? May I take your vote, please?
I vote for.
4. Thank you. Thank you, members. That's 23 votes for.
C-2452, Localism Act 2011, Appointment of Independent Persons. And I'll ask Tom Barker, Chief Operating Officer and Monitoring Officer, to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Chair. In order to help deal with code of conduct matters, the Council recruits independent persons, and we do that collectively alongside Suffolk County Council, Ipswich Borough Council and West Suffolk Council. The report recommends that 2 people are appointed and 1 person is reappointed, so it's 3 in total. Their details are provided in Appendix A. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's proposing? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Register and a seconder. Councillor Dowling. What's that? What, you want to do questions? No. Okay. Does any questions or points of clarification on this required? No. So I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley?
Madam Chair, I will be asked to comment on the paper.
I asked if there were any questions.
No questions to voting.
Sorry?
Straight to vote.
Right. Are we being asked to comment on the paper, or are we going straight from...
No, you were asked if there were any questions or points of clarification on this.
Right. I have none.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on that basis, we can now move to the vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please?
Against.
Against. Thank you.
Oh, I might make it till 8 o'clock.
Thank you, members. That is 21 votes for, 1 vote against and 1 abstention.
2453, appointments to the Independent Remuneration Panel. And I ask Tom Barker, Chief Operating Officer and Monitoring Officer, to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Chair. The final report, a small flurry of reports from me. I'll try to keep this really brief. The Council is required to establish a panel known as the Independent Remuneration Panel to make recommendations on the making and amendment of members' allowance schemes. This paper proposes that 3 people are appointed to the IRP and that we undertake a recruitment process for 2 further members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Smith, and a seconder, Councillor McLaren. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or points of clarification on this one? Councillor Davis?
Can I just clarify? We've just appointed Miss Susan Putters as one of the 3. She's also, or I guess it's saying Sue Putters. Is that one and the same person? And is it normal for a member that's been asked to be an independent member can sit on their own remuneration panel? Is that normal?
It's not their own, it's ours.
Yeah, but
so if I can clarify, the Independent Remuneration Panel looks at the councillor allowance scheme.
Not.
The independent persons that were included within the previous report support the code of conduct process.
Yeah.
So they're independent panels, and one is not looking at the other, if that makes sense. They're entirely separate. Yeah. And it's fairly normal that you may have somebody who is on both. That's not an unusual occurrence.
Any other points for clarification, or can I move to the vote? Well, don't all speak at once. Vote. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Thank you, members. That is 21 votes for, 1 vote against and 1 abstention.
So that's carried. Thank you very much. I now move to item 14 on the agenda, councillor appointments. And I'm not aware of any changes to the placings. Next item on the agenda is motions on notice. And there are none. So the time is 19:49 and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone.